Welcome back from that breather. I just checked my time and it's Tech Talk time with Spiky Kobe Kruma. Good morning, Spiky.
Good morning, Maps.
How you doing?
Always 100.
You're right. Okay, so what are we doing? We're continuing our series.
Yeah, we're definitely continuing our series.
Yeah, the perfect
computer.
Yeah, choosing the perfect. Yeah. Okay,
computer.
cool. So today, what are we doing?
So we talked about the whole thing. We talked about monitors last week. Now, today we're talking about choosing the right processor.
Okay.
I know a lot of people hear all these figures and all these letters being thrown around. You hear i3, i5, i7, and more recently i9 when we're talking about, Intel processors. And then when it comes to AMD processors, you have the Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, the Threadrippers and everything, and it confuses people. So we're going to break it down.
Okay.
So first off, what we need to know is you have to know what kind of CPU you're choosing, whether you're choosing a desktop CPU, a laptop CPU, or a server CPU. Now, what you need to know is that
and the CPU being what?
That's your processor. Good. I like that question. A lot of people think that the system unit is the CPU.
Yeah.
But the processor, that little chip in the computer, in your desktop, in your laptop, in your phone, that is your CPU. That's your central processing unit.
Cool.
Yeah. So you need to know, well, if you chose a desktop, you chose a desktop because desktop CPUs, they offer better, processing speed because they can allow more cooling because, desktops are spacious and then a lot of air and more fans can go in there and it can cool better. So desktop CPUs are always faster. Now there are laptop CPUs too. These also have their advantages. Now, when you're looking at an Intel laptop processor, for instance, they have a feature called WiDi that allows you to beam whatever's on your laptop screen to your smart TV screen wirelessly without connecting any wires. Now that's something that desktop CPUs don't have. And then you have server processors. So if you're someone who knows that you want to keep your computer on for a very long time, we're talking over days, you need something that's resilient, you need something that has failovers. Those are what server processors are capable of. So those are the choices you have to make. But most people will be going between desktop CPUs and laptop CPUs.
Yeah.
Now moving on to that, then you have choices. There's AMD and there's Intel. It's the same thing when you come to GPUs. You have AMD and NVIDIA. But in here you have AMD and Intel. It's a long-standing battle which basically stems with people deciding whether they want one brand or the other. As for performance, right now, they're almost at par. I say almost because in some spaces, you find Intel whipping AMD, and in some spaces, you find AMD whipping Intel. Now, gamers would definitely go for AMD, and I'll tell you why. So as you move on, you realize that there are different things that you need to consider. There's dual cores, there's quad cores, and then there's octa-core. Now, dual definitely means 2 cores.
Yeah.
Quad core, 4 cores. And then octa-core,
8, 6, 7, 9, 10. 8.
It's 8.
Yeah.
So, I mean, about less than a decade ago, we had only single core processors. That means that your processor had one core that did everything for you. So if you're browsing, that core handled your browsing. If you're watching a movie, that same core handled your movie watching. But now we have dual core, so you can be watching a movie and then browsing, and they be distributed across the cores. And I have octa cores, 8 cores. So it basically improves the multitasking.
Yeah.
So if you're like me, who has about 72 tabs open in your browser, you need a machine that's capable of multiple processing, multiple core machines. So I'd go for an octa-core. But the higher, the more expensive.
Yeah.
So you look at your budget, and then you look at how many cores you think would suit you. Most people would do best with a quad-core, and you go for what you need. Now, when you move on to the processor, there's something called a cache. Now, I spoke about the RAM the last time. The cache acts like a RAM. It's a temporary storage for your program's, instructions. Now, every cache is just a small amount. It's not as big as your actual RAM because it handles these, data transfers very, very, very quickly. Now, the more cache you have, the faster your computer would basically work. So you want to make sure that you have about, reasonable amount of cache based on the processor you choose. And the larger your process cache, the more files you'll be able to store for that quick retrieval. And that's a small graphic, representation of how CPU caches work. So moving on, there is something a lot of people don't know, a lot of people know, some people don't know.
Yeah.
It's called GPU. Now, CPUs come with integrated GPUs. Newer CPUs do. Older CPUs, nah, they don't. So the integrated GPU acts like a graphics processing unit. Now, your graphics processing unit processes intensive graphics that your normal CPU instructions cannot handle. So, for instance, if you are, say, converting a video from one format to the other, it will be best handled by your graphics processing unit.
Okay.
Because that does better calculation than your CPU. Now, integrated CPUs, they can do some of this work, but a dedicated GPU, in the case where you want to play a video game, you want a dedicated GPU. So if you're seeing that your CPU has an integrated GPU and you're thinking, oh, this can help me play a video game, I don't think it will, especially if it's a game like you want to play FIFA.
Okay.
You don't want to use
yeah, all right.
an integrated GPU.
Yeah.
So moving on, then we have your frequency. That's the most important part of every processor. A lot of people see your processor, they are measured in kilohertz, megahertz, and gigahertz. Kilohertz, not so much because we've moved way beyond that. We're now in the gigahertz area. So the frequency is what you need to look at when you're buying a processor. Now, that's why I mentioned that gamers like AMDs because they're overclockable. When we say overclockable, your frequency is basically your clock speed, the processor's clock speed. That's how fast the processor processes instructions. That's why we measure it in hertz and speed. So if you have a processor that's about 2.7 gigahertz, and I have a processor of the same, specification, but at 3.7 gigahertz, it means that my processor is going to process information faster than yours. But there's a caveat here. Someone may have an i5 processor with about 3 gigahertz speed, and you may have an i7 processor with about 1.7 gigahertz speed, and you may have more cache, and you may have more cores, and you would beat him when it comes to processing speed. So it's something that really needs calculating. You need to know, because all these things play together. If you don't get the right combination, you may be throwing your money away. So in as much as you could make the choice yourself, I suggest that in choosing a CPU, always reach out to your IT friend.
All right, so before I let my IT best friend go, Intel and AMD. Yes, AMDA, right? Yes. Yeah. Which one comes with the MacBook, or it's not specific to any laptop? I just want to wrap my head around that quickly before we leave.
Okay, so far, almost every MacBook lately comes with Intel.
Okay.
But they have AMD GPUs in there too.
Okay.
So it's...
something or something. All right, okay. Thank you so much, Spiky,
Thank you
for that. We'll continue our series of factors worth considering when buying your computer. If you have any questions, send us a message on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram with Joy News on TV. And that's how we end Joy News Interactive here on the Joy News channel with me, Mapisa CBD. Have yourselves an awesome day, and I'll see you at 12:50 for Showbiz.